evening, YouTube. It's Joe. It's Monday evening. You know, I decided to make a racket because I started talking, and when I start talking, he starts talking. Okay, so tonight's video is a strange one, I think, because I don't know that I've talked about these things before on my channel, but I heard an interesting part of a documentary on, let me calm him down. Oh, sometimes he's better if he's in my arms. Okay. Today on CBC radio, I heard an interesting radio documentary, most of it on my way to a school. I think I was in the car for like 15 minutes, so I got to hear a good chunk of it, about teenagers today and kids today and their views on sex and morality and how they are so immersed in this like completely skanky sexual hip-hop culture, and it's so normal to them. And it was kind of disturbing. So they were interviewing some kids, and these kids were singing along to a song called Do I Look Like a Slut? And the lyrics were awful. And I'll try and find a link and put it here. Not that I really want to pass the link onto this awful song, but just to get a taste of it. And this is a very typical hip-hop song these days that kids listen to and dance along to, and specifically girls, and they think it's funny, I'm sure. They think it's kind of ironic. I'm sure some of them think it is. And I'm sure some of them don't even know it is, or don't think it is, or... but just the way that this has become so normalized, that girls think this is the way we dress and this is the way we talk, and boys think this is the way girls dress and this is the way they talk, and everybody treats everybody accordingly. And I just cringe, and I think, and then I feel so old, and I'm the old kids today. But that was one thing. And then I was watching, I have a new digital HD TV receiver over the air, which means I get some channels without, I don't pay for cable or anything like that, but I get some really good clear channels, one of which is CW. It's the Tyra show. I don't know, Tyra Banks. It's pretty cheesy, but it was the only channel I was getting in clear for the first few days. And she had an episode about teenage hookers, and this one girl was 18, I guess, and she'd been prostituting since she was 14, and Tyra asked her if she'd ever been raped, and she said yes, many times. And then Tyra kind of asked her to clarify, like, what do you mean by raped? And I swear to you, my heart broke. This is how the girl defined her. She said, when the trick didn't pay. That's the definition of rape in her eyes. Because God forbid she ever not want to have sex, and that be the definition of rape. Have sex when you don't want to, or under pressure or under duress. Because she's always had it under pressure or under duress her whole life. That's the only sex she's probably ever known, but at least she got paid for it. So when the trick runs off and leaves her high and dry, or beats her first and then leaves her high and dry, that was her definition of rape. And I was just scandalized. I had no idea. I had no idea that girls don't even know what the definition of rape is. Now, I identified as a fairly radical, opinionated, angry feminist for a lot of years. And I used to read a lot of Andrea Dworkin, who, if you don't know, is a pretty intense radical feminist, and a lot of feminists actually really hate her because she's so out there with her opinions. She's extreme anti-porn activist, really believes that all porn is criminal and all porn is violence towards women. And it was her idea. She actually wrote a book with a guy named John Stoltenheim, I think was his last name, which, interestingly enough, she was a lesbian, he was a gay man, but they somehow lived a life together, kind of, I don't know if they were married or what, but they were both writers and life partners, even though their genders and sexualities kind of crisscrossed. And he would write, he was kind of a noted feminist himself, and he would write some interesting stuff. I was introduced to her books through him. He wrote a book called Refusing to Be a Man, which I read in the early 90s when I lived in the Arctic, and I remember being riveted by that book. Then getting into Dworkin and being really into Dworkin's ideas, and I still am to a certain extent, and I know they're not popular ideas, but I don't care. She believes that all sex is rape. I think, quite frankly, I believe that rape is much more prevalent than most people make it out to be. I think if you don't want it, and even if you kind of say, all right, fine, just freaking do it, so you'll quit poking me in the back and let me sleep, that to me is rape. You said no, you made your notions clear, but they weren't listening. They don't care. Their sex drive overpowers your word no, and they ask you again and again and again, and eventually you give in. I still call that rape. I've always called that rape. I believe marital rape is probably occurs in 100% of cases, because I think most married couples will acknowledge that that's happened at one point or another, where one person didn't want to have sex, the other one did, and the one who wanted it coerced the one who didn't into having it. or annoyed them, or poked them in the back, or kept them up at night, or whatever, drove them crazy till they finally said fine. And I've always had very strong opinions on that. And I think that has to do with being raised Catholic, and that has to do with being told from a very young age. I remember my mother saying, it's your wifely duty, you have to do it whether you want to or not. I remember my mother saying things like, if you don't give in to your husband and he masturbates, the sin of masturbation is on is on your shoulders, because you were his wife and he didn't have to sin, but you refused to give it to him, so you're the sinner. All kinds of psychotic notions like this. And I think, oh, what a freaking horrible thing to teach children. What a horrible thing to teach girls and boys, but just, I can only speak from the point of view of being raised on the female side of it, which is your duty in life is to lay down, spread your legs, put out, whether you want it or not. And people wonder why I'm single. My sister and I both often quip that it wasn't really a far leap to get from there to here, because we both lead pretty serene celibate lives, and it's through choosing, and it's also through it's an empowering lifestyle when you were taught that the opposite was all that you could ever really hope to have. To hear that young girls pick these options in life, for instance, skanking up, dancing around, shaking their booty to songs like Am I a Slut? And, you know, hoping boys notice them, or hoping boys don't smack them on the ass and call them hoe, because that's apparently what kids do today. It makes my heart break. It really does, because I don't think anybody wants to be that sexually exploited, but I think you just don't know any better because they're surrounded by it in the media. And then you hear about these young girls who become prostitutes, and their only definition of rape is that it wasn't paid for, and choice is completely out the window. I would love to see a bigger dialogue on choice and as it relates to sex. And people always say, well, you know, I chose to sleep with them. But I think, kind of like women choose to wear a burqa, sometimes it's just the easier solution, because if you don't, there are repercussions to not wearing a burqa in certain countries. So you say it's your choice, even though maybe it's not really 100% what you would have chosen if you had options. Similarly, I can only speak for myself. Like, I used to live with my ex-boyfriend, and if he wanted sex and he'd be keeping me up all night, you know, I needed a night's sleep. What can you do? There just comes a point, like at 2 a.m, where it's not a choice anymore. It's really not a choice. And I really feel very strongly about this. I'd love to hear some other opinions on this subject. So if you have anything to say, please leave me a video response and or written comments down below. If you have any opinions on Dworkin, or I forget his name, is it Stoltenberg? I'll find out and I'll link to it. Yeah, I'd love to hear anybody's opinions on these issues. I will be uploading a video tomorrow, hopefully, or the next day. Some of the country surroundings. I've been making a video, but I wanted to get one of me descending into the city to show you the stark contrast between my drive home to the new place and my drive home to the old place, which is why I come home with a big goofy grin on my face every day now, as opposed to this look, which I always had before, because I have this permanent crack in my forehead, see, from years of making that face. Yeah, your mother says you make that face, it sticks. See that? It's stuck. It's stuck. It's okay. It's a testament to who I used to be. I have no regrets. Hey, remember that video I made for my view on the matter? I have no regrets. Even that. I don't even regret that. Have a good night.